Ladies and gentlemen, today we must confront a truth that is often ignored, yet so powerful in its simplicity. Silence has the power to destroy the ego. The ego, that voice within us that feeds on validation, attention, and recognition, is fragile. It seeks to be heard, to be seen, and to be acknowledged. But what happens when we choose silence instead? You see, the ego thrives on external affirmation. It feeds on the applause of others, the praise, the recognition, and even the conflict. When someone's ego is inflated, they become loud, demanding, and insistent. But silence is a weapon the ego cannot understand, and it is in silence where its power begins to wither. Silence forces reflection. When we refuse to react, when we choose to remain quiet in the face of provocation or criticism, the ego is left with no ground to stand on. It can no longer latch onto our emotions. It can no longer feed off our response. Silence reveals the truth that the ego does not want us to see. It is not who we are. It is an illusion, a mask we wear to protect our insecurities and to seek validation from the outside world. Silence shifts the power dynamic. The moment you choose silence in the face of arrogance or pride, you take control. You step out of the battle for attention and supremacy. The person with the loudest voice often thinks they are the one in charge, but silence allows you to observe, to understand, and to hold your ground without words. In a world that demands noise, your silence is a statement of strength. It shows you don't need to engage in the petty struggles for dominance. Your value is not determined by the volume of your voice or the size of your presence. Silence challenges the ego's need to control. Think about it. When we remain silent, we no longer offer our energy to the power struggles around us. We don't feed into the drama, the gossip, or the need for validation. The ego, however, needs constant reinforcement to stay in control, to feel superior. When it doesn't get that from you, it starts to crumble. The more you withhold your emotional energy, the more you strip the ego of its source of strength. But here's the paradox: when you choose silence, it is not a sign of weakness. It is a deliberate, powerful choice. You are choosing not to play the ego's game. You are choosing to rise above the noise, to move in your own direction, independent of the forces that try to manipulate and control your thoughts. Your silence speaks louder than any words could ever do. It reveals wisdom, maturity, and self-awareness. Silence brings clarity. In a world that is always speaking, shouting, and demanding our attention, silence provides the clarity we need to see the truth. It quiets the distractions, both internal and external. It allows us to reconnect with our true self, not the one shaped by external approval or fear of judgment. In silence, you hear your own thoughts, your own intuition, your own calling. And when the ego is stripped of its distractions, it is easier to see its limitations. So my friends, the next time you are confronted by the arrogance or pride of another, remember this: your silence is not an absence of strength, but the presence of your power. It is a power that does not need to boast, to shout, or to prove anything. Your silence is a choice to rise above the ego, to walk in the confidence of knowing that your worth is not determined by the opinions of others, but by the quiet strength that comes from within. When you choose silence, you are choosing freedom. You are choosing peace. You are choosing to no longer be a slave to the ego's demands. And in that freedom, you find a power far greater than any ego could ever hold. Let your silence destroy their ego, not with hatred or aggression, but with the profound strength of knowing who you are without the need for anyone else to tell you. Silence has a remarkable power that is often underestimated in a world driven by noise and constant communication. When we choose silence, we invite space for reflection, and in this space, profound transformation can occur. Reflection is a powerful tool, one that allows us to examine our thoughts, our actions, and our feelings with clarity. Yet, in order for this to happen, we must first embrace the silence, the stillness, and the quiet that disrupts the chaos of our everyday existence. Reflection is the process of looking inward, evaluating our lives, and gaining a deeper understanding of who we are and why we do the things we do. It is an act that requires the quieting of the mind, the slowing down of our thoughts, and the ability to hear our inner voice above the din of the world around us. The ego, with its constant need for validation, attention, and approval, resists silence. It thrives in environments filled with noise, drama, and external distractions. The ego is a construct of the mind that seeks to define our worth through the opinions of others, through material success, and through the praise of those around us. In a world where everyone is speaking, shouting, and vying for attention, the ego finds its place by taking center stage. It feeds on affirmation and recognition, constantly needing to prove itself. But when we choose silence, we disrupt this cycle. Silence forces us to turn inward, away from the external influences that feed the ego, and into the realm of self-awareness and introspection. In this silence, we are given the opportunity to ask ourselves the hard questions. Who am I beneath the surface of my achievements, my relationships, and my external identity? What drives me to seek approval from others? Why do I feel the need to be seen, to be heard, to be recognized? As we sit in silence, we are confronted with the truth that the ego does not define who we are. It is merely a mask, a false self that we wear to protect our insecurities and our vulnerabilities. The ego seeks to create a sense of importance, to convince us that we are special and deserving of attention. It pushes us to constantly perform, to be busy, to be involved in the lives of others, to prove that we are needed and wanted. But when we are silent, the ego is left with nothing to cling to. It cannot feed on external validation if we are not engaging with the world in the same way. In this moment of stillness, we are able to see the ego for what it truly is, an illusion, a construct of the mind designed to protect us from feelings of inadequacy or fear. Silence, therefore, becomes a powerful tool for self-awareness. When we are silent, we are no longer distracted by the noise of the world, the opinions of others, or the need to meet external expectations. We can begin to hear our own voice, the voice of our true self, the one that is not defined by accomplishments, possessions, or the approval of others. In this silence, we can hear our inner wisdom, that quiet, still voice that guides us toward our true purpose in life. It is in the space of silence that we begin to recognize that our worth is not determined by what we do or how others perceive us, but by who we are at the core of our being. The ego, in its attempt to control and manipulate, cannot exist in a state of silence. It is only when we are distracted, caught up in the noise of the world, that the ego finds its strength. It convinces us that we need to be busy, to be active, to be constantly engaging with the world in order to be valuable. But silence strips away these distractions, forcing us to confront the deeper aspects of ourselves. It reveals the truth that our worth is inherent, not something that needs to be earned or proven to others. In the quiet, we come to realize that we are enough just as we are, and that we do not need to constantly prove our value to anyone. As we allow ourselves to embrace silence, we begin to see the limitations of the ego. The ego is built on the need for external validation, and when we stop seeking approval from the outside world, it has nothing to sustain itself. The more we choose silence, the more we break free from the ego's grasp. The more we resist the temptation to engage in the drama of the world, to fight for attention or recognition, the more we move toward a state of inner peace and clarity. Silence allows us to let go of the need for control, for dominance, and for external recognition. It helps us detach from the illusion that our worth is tied to the opinions of others. This is where the true power of silence lies. It allows us to shift our focus from external validation to internal reflection. We stop looking outside ourselves for the answers and we begin to look within. In the silence, we are able to listen to our true desires, to our inner calling, and to the quiet wisdom that resides in the depths of our being. We start to understand that our purpose is not to please others, to win their approval, or to be constantly in the spotlight. Our purpose is to align with our true self, to live authentically, and to embrace the gifts and talents that are uniquely ours. Silence helps us reconnect with this purpose, and in doing so, it dissolves the false identities that the ego has created. When we choose silence, we choose a deeper connection with ourselves. We allow ourselves the space to think, to feel, and to reflect without the interference of external influences. It is in this space that we can begin to heal, to let go of the baggage we carry, and to confront the truths that we have been avoiding. Silence gives us the courage to face our fears, our insecurities, and our doubts, and to embrace them without judgment. It allows us to sit with our emotions, to process them, and to move through them with grace and compassion. Moreover, silence is not just about the absence of sound, it is about the absence of the noise in our minds. Our thoughts are often cluttered, chaotic, and filled with judgments, fears, and anxieties. When we choose silence, we create space to quiet the mind and to separate ourselves from these turbulent thoughts. We begin to see that we are not our thoughts, and that our true essence is not defined by the stories our minds create. The ego relies on these stories to validate itself, to maintain its sense of importance and control. But when we step back from the noise of our thoughts, we can see the ego for what it truly is, a collection of ideas and beliefs that we have identified with, but that do not define our true nature. In silence, we are able to observe our thoughts without attachment. We can watch them come and go without reacting or identifying with them. We begin to realize that we are the observers of our thoughts, not the thoughts themselves. This realization creates a sense of freedom, as we no longer feel controlled by our mental chatter or our emotional reactions. We can step into a place of inner stillness where we are at peace with ourselves and with the world around us. In this state of peace, the ego loses its grip and we are able to experience life from a place of pure awareness and presence. As we reflect in silence, we begin to notice the patterns in our lives, the unconscious behaviors that drive us, and the limiting beliefs that we have held onto for so long. Silence offers us the opportunity to break free from these patterns and to make conscious choices that align with our true values and desires. It is a powerful tool for personal growth as it allows us to see ourselves with clarity, to recognize our strengths and weaknesses, and to take responsibility for our actions and our outcomes. It helps us to shed the layers of conditioning and societal expectations and to embrace the truth of who we are beneath it all. In the end, silence forces reflection because it gives us the space to step out of the noise of the world and into our own inner truth. It is in this space that the ego loses its power and our true self can emerge. When we stop looking outside ourselves for validation, when we cease engaging in the constant battle for attention and approval, we are left with nothing but the truth of our own being. And in this truth, we find our strength, our purpose, and our peace. Silence is not just the absence of sound, it is the presence of awareness, the stillness that allows us to connect with our true essence, and the key to unlocking our deepest potential. Silence holds a power that most people fail to realize. In a world dominated by constant communication, noise, and reaction, choosing silence can completely shift the power dynamic between individuals, situations, and even the world around us. When we remain silent, we take a position of control, not in the aggressive, manipulative way that many might associate with power, but in a way that is calm, centered, and inwardly focused. Silence does not react to provocation, nor does it feed into the drama. It stands firm in its resolve, and in doing so, it forces a shift in the dynamics of interaction. By choosing silence, we reclaim power in moments where noise and reaction would typically dictate the outcome. When we speak or respond to everything that is thrown at us, we relinquish control. The external world dictates our responses, and we are pulled into the whirlwind of the ever-changing circumstances around us. Our egos, which thrive on validation, attention, and recognition, drive us to speak, to explain, to justify, and to react. The more we respond to the noise around us, the more we give our power away. Every argument, every criticism, and every external judgment demands a reaction. And if we give in to these demands, we allow ourselves to be swayed by forces outside of our control. However, silence is the antithesis of this. Silence is not a retreat or an avoidance, rather it is an act of strength, a choice to remain unaffected by external forces. When we choose silence, we are no longer at the mercy of outside influences. We stop giving away our energy to the external drama and focus inwardly. In this state, we hold the power because we are no longer caught in the ebb and flow of constant reactions. We have stepped out of the cycle of noise, and by doing so, we take charge of how we wish to respond to life without being manipulated by it. The real power of silence lies in its ability to shift the focus from external chaos to internal clarity. When we are silent, we are forced to listen to the world in a different way. Instead of reacting to the noise, we observe it from a place of stillness. Silence creates a distance between us and the external world, allowing us to see situations for what they truly are rather than being caught in the emotional turbulence they may stir up. The ego, which feeds on constant stimulation, has little to no power in the presence of silence. It cannot manipulate or control a situation when there is no engagement, no emotional reaction to play with. In silence, we take back our own power by choosing not to give it away to others, to situations, or to our emotions. In relationships, silence can be an incredibly powerful tool. Often when we find ourselves in conflict, the impulse is to react, to defend ourselves, to argue our point. This is a natural response driven by the ego's need for recognition and validation. We feel the need to prove ourselves, to show that we are right, to demand that the other person sees things our way. However, when we choose silence in these moments, we remove ourselves from the fight. We stop engaging in the power struggle. And by doing so, we deny the other person the emotional energy they need to fuel the conflict. The dynamic shifts from one of confrontation and defensiveness to one of quiet observation. The other person may be left with no one to argue with, no one to push against, and in that moment, their own ego may begin to falter as they confront the emptiness of the battle they were trying to engage in. Silence is a powerful form of nonviolent resistance. In a world that often expects us to defend, explain, and justify ourselves at every turn, choosing silence becomes a subtle but profound act of defiance. It is a way of rejecting the idea that we must constantly be engaged in the world's noise, its battles, and its conflicts. When we choose to remain silent in the face of provocation, we refuse to give the external world the power to dictate our emotions, our actions, or our energy. In this act, we reclaim our peace and our strength. The power dynamic shifts from a reactive one where we are subject to the whims of others to a more proactive one where we consciously choose when and how to engage. Moreover, silence forces others to reflect. When we are silent in a conversation or in a confrontation, it leaves space for the other person to fill the void. This may make them uncomfortable, especially if they are accustomed to receiving constant validation through back and forth exchanges. They are forced to confront their own position, their own thoughts, and their own ego. In this moment, the silence speaks louder than any words could. It often brings to light the insecurity, the doubt, and the unresolved feelings that the other person may have been attempting to avoid by engaging in conflict. The silence leaves them with no external opposition to push against, and they are left with the weight of their own thoughts. In this way, silence exposes the weakness of the ego, both in ourselves and in others, and shifts the power away from the need for control to the quiet strength of self-awareness. The act of choosing silence can also neutralize the power of manipulation. When someone seeks to manipulate or provoke us into a reaction, their goal is to control our behavior, to force us into a position where we respond emotionally or impulsively. By choosing silence, we deny them that control. We do not engage with their attempts to dominate or influence us. This breaks the chain of manipulation, and in doing so, we take away their power. Silence is a refusal to play the game of manipulation, a refusal to be controlled by external pressures or emotional blackmail. It is a conscious choice to remain anchored in our own sense of self, and this in turn changes the power dynamic. We become the ones in control, not because we impose our will on others, but because we refuse to let others impose theirs upon us. In the workplace or in situations of authority, silence can be an even more potent tool. Often those in positions of power use their voices to assert dominance, to issue commands, or to manipulate outcomes. In these situations, silence becomes a subtle but powerful response. When someone in authority speaks, they are often expecting a reaction, whether it's agreement, deference, or action. If we remain silent, we resist the expected response. We do not fall in line with the usual patterns of behavior. This can cause discomfort and sometimes even confusion because we are no longer playing by the rules of the power dynamic. In this way, silence challenges authority not through confrontation, but through the absence of response. It shifts the power back to us because we are no longer reacting to the dictates of those in control. Silence also invites introspection and awareness. In moments of quiet, we have the opportunity to step back and gain clarity on the situation at hand. It allows us to assess the true nature of what is happening without being clouded by emotions or external noise. The more we engage with silence, the more we understand the depth of our own thoughts, feelings, and motivations. This awareness gives us a strategic advantage because we are no longer driven by impulsive reactions, but by a clear understanding of our desires, goals, and values. In this way, silence allows us to shift the power dynamic internally as well. We move from a place of external influence to a place of internal wisdom, where we are guided by a deeper sense of purpose and direction. The power of silence lies in its ability to disarm. It disarms not only others who may expect a reaction, but also the ego within ourselves, which thrives on external validation and conflict. Silence neutralizes the need to defend, justify, or prove oneself. It is a form of resistance, not to the people around us, but to the patterns and habits of thought that dictate our responses. It is in silence that we realize that true power lies not in words, but in the choice to remain silent. By doing so, we are taking control of the situation and the narrative, allowing us to rewrite the power dynamics at play. Silence holds a profound and transformative power, one that challenges the very essence of the ego. The ego, in its simplest terms, is the sense of self. The identity that we believe defines us and connects us to the world around us. It thrives on control, validation, and external recognition. It wants to shape our interactions, guide our decisions, and ensure that we are seen in the light that it believes is necessary for our survival. Yet, in the face of silence, the ego's need for control is forced into question. It is in these moments of quiet that the ego finds itself uncertain, uncomfortable, and even vulnerable. Silence forces the ego to relinquish its usual dominance, making it one of the most potent tools for personal growth and transformation. The ego's primary function is to protect and preserve the self, often through the lens of external validation. We look to others to define who we are, to confirm our worth, and to reinforce the narratives we tell ourselves about our capabilities and achievements. The ego needs this recognition, it thrives on it. In many ways, the ego sees control as a way to ensure that it gets what it wants, that it remains in a position of dominance in both our internal and external worlds. It craves influence, approval, and the ability to shape situations according to its desires. This need for control manifests in many aspects of life, from our relationships to our career ambitions to the way we handle conflict and challenges. In a world where communication is constant and attention is fleeting, the ego feels validated by words, actions, and reactions. It wants to assert its dominance over situations, to speak its mind, to make its voice heard, and to ensure that others know where it stands. The ego thrives when it is allowed to speak, to explain, and to convince others of its value. It believes that by controlling the narrative, it can control how the world perceives it. This is where silence becomes such a powerful force against the ego's need for control. When we choose silence, we step away from the ego's need for validation. We refuse to engage in the constant cycle of proving ourselves, explaining our actions, or defending our beliefs. In these moments, the ego is disoriented. It does not know how to respond to silence because silence does not feed it. Silence does not ask for approval. It does not demand attention. Silence simply exists, and in doing so, it challenges the ego's deeply ingrained need for external recognition. When we refuse to speak, to react, or to engage in the drama that the ego thrives on, we disrupt the pattern of control that the ego has come to rely on. The need for control is at the heart of many conflicts and struggles. When we feel the need to control a situation, we often create tension and resistance. We try to force outcomes, to manipulate circumstances, or to convince others of our perspective. This need to control is rooted in the ego's desire to protect itself and ensure its own survival. It believes that if it does not assert dominance, it will be overlooked, ignored, or even undermined. It is this need for control that leads to insecurity, fear, and often unnecessary conflict. When the ego is in control, we are constantly in a state of defense, always watching for threats to our identity, our beliefs, and our place in the world. However, silence presents a stark contrast to this need for control. In moments of silence, there is no attempt to control the situation, to manipulate others, or to defend oneself. Silence simply allows things to be as they are. It does not need to change anything. It does not need to assert its will. In silence, we let go of the need to control how others perceive us or how situations unfold. This act of surrender is incredibly powerful, for it places us in a position of strength that is not based on dominance or manipulation, but on inner peace and clarity. Silence teaches us that we do not need to control every aspect of our lives to be secure. Instead, it is in letting go of this need that we find true freedom. The ego is always looking for ways to assert its control, whether through words, actions, or even emotions. It constantly strives to shape the narrative, to be the center of attention, and to make sure that everything revolves around its needs and desires. Silence, however, removes the ego from the equation. It forces the ego to face the uncomfortable reality that it does not always need to be in control. In fact, it is in the absence of control that true growth and transformation occur. Silence forces us to confront our own discomfort, our own insecurity, and our own fears, and in doing so, it allows us to break free from the limitations imposed by the ego. The act of choosing silence in the face of conflict, criticism, or provocation is a direct challenge to the ego's need for control. When we remain silent in the midst of tension, we refuse to feed the drama. We do not respond with anger, defensiveness, or frustration. We do not attempt to control the narrative by proving ourselves right or explaining our position. Instead, we let go of the need to control how others see us and simply remain present with our own thoughts and emotions. This silence can be incredibly unsettling for the ego because it is not accustomed to being left in a position where it has no influence over the situation. It thrives on engagement, on reaction, and on control, but in silence, it is forced to confront the fact that it is not the driving force in the situation. In relationships, silence can be one of the most powerful ways to challenge the ego's need for control. When we are in conflict with others, the ego often wants to assert its superiority, to be heard, and to have the last word. We may feel the need to defend ourselves, to prove that we are right, or to make sure the other person knows that we are not to be undermined. This need to control the outcome of the conversation often leads to escalation and deeper conflict. However, when we choose silence instead of engaging in this power struggle, we shift the dynamic. We no longer play into the ego's need to be heard or validated. We step out of the conflict and create space for reflection. Silence allows us to hold our ground without having to defend ourselves, to remain centered without having to explain ourselves. It is in this space that the ego begins to lose its grip on the situation. By stepping out of the cycle of reaction and control, we allow the relationship to evolve in a healthier direction, one that is not dictated by the ego's desires. The ego's need for control is also evident in the way we approach challenges and uncertainties. When faced with difficulty, the ego wants to take charge, to create a plan, and to force a solution. It does not like uncertainty or ambiguity because it threatens its need for control. Silence, on the other hand, invites us to surrender to the unknown, to sit with uncertainty, and to trust that we do not need to have all the answers. In moments of silence, we are not rushing to fix things or to control outcomes. Instead, we allow things to unfold as they will, trusting that everything is happening for a reason, even if we cannot immediately see the bigger picture. This acceptance of uncertainty challenges the ego's need to control every aspect of our lives. It reminds us that we do not have to force every situation into a neat and predictable outcome. Silence teaches us that peace comes not from control, but from surrender and trust. The ego's need for control is an illusion. It convinces us that in order to be safe, happy, and successful, we must control every aspect of our lives. But in reality, control only creates more tension and resistance. It locks us into a cycle of fear and insecurity, always trying to manage every situation, every conversation, and every outcome. Silence, however, is the antidote to this illusion. It breaks the cycle of control by reminding us that we do not need to dominate our circumstances to find peace. It shows us that we can be powerful without being in control, that we can be free without having to manipulate the world around us. When we choose silence, we are choosing to relinquish the false belief that we need to control everything to be whole. And in this act of letting go, we experience the true power of peace, freedom, and self-awareness. Silence is often considered a pause, a moment of stillness between the noise of everyday life. It can be seen as an absence of sound, a gap in conversation or activity. Yet silence is much more than a mere void. It is a powerful space where the mind can find clarity, where thoughts settle and align, and where the noise of the world fades into the background, allowing for a deeper understanding of oneself and the world around us. In a world filled with constant distraction, noise, and information overload, silence holds the potential to provide profound clarity, helping us see things with a perspective that is often hidden beneath the layers and layers of noise. Silence has a unique ability to clear away the clutter of the mind, allowing us to connect with our deeper wisdom, make better decisions, and find direction in times of uncertainty. At its core, silence creates the necessary conditions for introspection. In our day-to-day lives, we are bombarded with external stimuli, conversations, social media, news, work demands, family obligations, and it's easy to lose track of our own thoughts. The constant stream of information can drown out the voice within, making it difficult to hear our inner wisdom or connect with our deeper selves. When we choose silence, we step away from the noise, giving ourselves the opportunity to listen, to reflect, and to process what is happening inside us. In the absence of external distractions, we are left with only ourselves. And it is in this space that clarity begins to emerge. The mind, which is often clouded by emotions, stress, and external influences, starts to settle when given the time and space to do so. In the quiet of silence, our thoughts become less frantic. We are no longer chasing after the next thing, distracted by the external world, or trying to manage 1,000 things at once. Instead, we can allow our thoughts to flow freely, without the pressure of having to respond immediately or fill the silence with noise. The constant hum of thoughts that usually plague us is stilled. Without the need to react, we are able to observe our thoughts with greater objectivity, allowing us to gain insight into what truly matters, what is important, and what is simply noise. We can sift through the clutter and identify the core issues, desires, and needs that may have been overshadowed by the demands of the world. Clarity comes from this inner stillness. When we are constantly engaged with the external world, our thoughts and decisions are often influenced by the opinions and expectations of others. We may make choices based on fear, pressure, or the desire for validation. But silence invites us to turn inward, to listen to our own voice, and to assess what is truly in alignment with our values and desires. It is in these moments of quiet that we can see our lives more clearly, free from the distractions that typically cloud our judgment. We gain a fresh perspective on our challenges, our goals, and our relationships. What once seemed complex or overwhelming becomes more manageable and straightforward. The answers that we have been searching for are often already within us, and silence allows us the space to uncover them. Moreover, silence provides clarity by giving us the opportunity to separate our thoughts from our emotions. Our emotions can be powerful, often driving our decisions and actions. However, when we are too immersed in our feelings, we can lose sight of the bigger picture. Emotions can cloud our judgment and lead us to make impulsive decisions that we later regret. Silence, however, creates the space needed to detach from the emotional turbulence that often accompanies life's challenges. In the quiet, we can observe our emotions from a distance without becoming entangled in them. This allows us to respond more thoughtfully rather than reactively to the situations we face. We can reflect on the source of our emotions, understand them better, and decide how we want to move forward. Silence enables us to step back and process our feelings, allowing them to inform our decisions without controlling them. When we are silent, we are also more attuned to the present moment. In the rush of daily life, it is easy to get caught up in past regrets or future anxieties. We worry about things that have already happened or stress over things that may or may not occur. Our minds often jump from one thought to another, constantly analyzing and ruminating. Silence, however, brings us back to the present. In the absence of distraction, we are able to focus on the here and now without being pulled in different directions. This mindfulness allows us to gain clarity about what is happening in the moment and to make decisions that are grounded in the present, rather than influenced by the weight of the past or the uncertainty of the future. Silence also brings clarity by helping us reconnect with our intuition. In our noisy world, it can be easy to forget that we have an innate wisdom within us. We have the capacity to sense what is right, what is true, and what is best for us. However, this inner wisdom is often drowned out by the external noise and the constant bombardment of information. When we allow ourselves to be silent, we create the conditions for our intuition to rise to the surface. In these moments of quiet, we can tune into our inner guidance, which often provides us with the clarity we need to navigate life's challenges. Our intuition speaks to us in subtle ways, and silence is the space in which we can hear it clearly. Another way silence brings clarity is by creating the space for creative insight. Often we look for solutions to our problems in the noise of our busy lives, hoping that the answer will come from an external source, another person, a book, or the internet. We might seek advice, look for patterns, or try to force a solution, but sometimes the most profound insights come when we stop looking outward and instead turn inward. Silence can spark creativity by allowing our minds to wander freely without the constraints of external expectations. When we are silent, our brains enter a different mode, one that is more conducive to creative thinking and problem solving. Ideas and solutions that once seemed elusive can suddenly appear as if out of nowhere in the stillness of the mind. Moreover, silence can bring clarity to our relationships. Communication is a key aspect of any relationship, but communication is not just about talking, it is also about listening. In our conversations, we often focus on what we want to say next, rather than truly listening to what the other person is saying. This can lead to misunderstandings, misinterpretations, and misinterpretations, and missed opportunities for connection. Silence allows us to listen deeply. When we are silent, we create space for the other person to speak. And we open ourselves to truly hearing their words, emotions, and needs. This active listening can lead to greater understanding, empathy, and clarity in our relationships. By removing the pressure to respond immediately or fill the silence with our own thoughts, we create a space where both parties can express themselves more openly and authentically. The clarity that silence brings also helps us to make better decisions. In times of uncertainty or when faced with a difficult choice, we often feel the need to act quickly, to find an immediate solution, or to seek advice from others. But silence allows us to take a step back, to observe the situation without judgment or panic. When we create the space to think clearly without the rush or pressure of external influences, we can make decisions that are more thoughtful, aligned with our values, and in harmony with our true desires. The clarity that comes from silence enables us to see all aspects of a situation, weigh our options, and choose the path that feels right, not just the one that seems easiest or most urgent. Finally, silence brings clarity by helping us detach from the chaos of the world. In a world where everything seems urgent, important, and demanding, silence offers a refuge. It allows us to step away from the chaos, to disconnect from the constant pressure to be productive, to react, or to engage with every issue that comes our way. In this space of detachment, we are able to gain perspective, to evaluate our priorities, and to determine what truly matters. Silence helps us cut through the noise and focus on what is essential, helping us to live with more intention and purpose. In the stillness of silence, clarity emerges like a sunrise after a storm. It is in these moments of quiet reflection that we find the answers we seek, the insight we need, and the understanding that was hidden beneath the noise. Silence provides the opportunity to connect with our deeper selves, to listen to our intuition, and to gain a clearer view of the world around us. It allows us to step away from the distractions and confusion, bringing us into a space of peace and clarity that is essential for living a meaningful and fulfilling life. Silence is often underestimated, seen merely as the absence of noise or words, but its true power lies far beyond what the ears can perceive. In a world where everything is vying for our attention, where our minds are constantly assaulted by external stimuli and inner chatter, silence is a choice, a deliberate act of stepping away from the noise to reconnect with our inner world. It is a powerful decision that allows us to regain control of our lives, our thoughts, and our responses. In choosing silence, we are not retreating or giving up. Rather, we are choosing clarity, focus, and strength. Silence is an act of personal power, one that enables us to respond to the world from a place of intention rather than reaction. It is the space where we regain our balance, reset our priorities, and come to understand our deeper desires and purpose. In the midst of chaos, silence becomes a refuge, a place of retreat where we can find respite and regroup. The external world is often overwhelming. News, social media, work pressures, and societal expectations create a constant barrage of noise that drowns out our inner voice. In such a world, silence is not a passive withdrawal. It is an active choice to step out of the noise and create space for reflection and clarity. It is a conscious decision to disconnect from the external chaos in order to reconnect with the self. In silence, we are not simply quieting the world around us, but we are intentionally quieting our minds, allowing ourselves the room to think deeply and consider our next steps without the pressure of immediate responses or external influence. One of the most profound aspects of silence is its ability to restore perspective. When we are caught up in the hustle and bustle of daily life, it is easy to become overwhelmed, to lose sight of what truly matters, and to become reactive to the demands placed upon us. We often make decisions in haste, driven by emotions or the need to respond quickly, only to regret those decisions later. Silence provides the space to pause and reflect, to consider the bigger picture before taking action. It allows us to step back and see situations for what they truly are, not what they appear to be in the moment. In the quiet, we can separate our emotions from our thoughts, gaining a more objective perspective on the challenges we face. We can assess situations with greater clarity, free from the fog of stress, anxiety, and impulse. This clarity allows us to make better decisions, ones that are more thoughtful, grounded, and in alignment with our true goals and values. Silence also empowers us to reclaim control over our emotions. In a world that constantly demands our attention, it is easy to be swept away by the emotional tides that arise within us. We may react impulsively, saying things we don't mean or making choices we later regret. Our emotions can easily dictate our actions, especially when we feel pressured or overwhelmed. Choosing silence, however, gives us the opportunity to pause before reacting, allowing us to check our emotional responses and respond thoughtfully. In those moments of quiet, we can observe our emotions without judgment, recognizing them for what they are: temporary, fleeting, and often not reflective of our true desires or needs. By embracing silence, we gain the power to regulate our emotional responses, creating space for calm and rational thought. This control over our emotions gives us the freedom to act in alignment with our values rather than being driven by impulsive reactions. Moreover, silence is a gateway to self-awareness. In our busy lives, we often lose touch with ourselves, caught up in the demands of work, relationships, and societal expectations. We are so focused on doing, achieving, and fulfilling the roles others expect of us that we forget to check in with who we are and what we truly want. Silence provides a space for introspection where we can reflect on our thoughts, feelings, and desires. It is in these moments of stillness that we come to understand ourselves more deeply, recognizing patterns, beliefs, and motivations that may have been hidden beneath the surface. By choosing silence, we can gain insight into our own minds, discovering the areas of our lives that need attention, healing, or growth. This awareness is the first step toward transformation, as it enables us to make conscious choices that are aligned with our true selves rather than being driven by external forces. In addition to fostering self-awareness, silence also deepens our connection to others. At first glance, it may seem counterintuitive that silence could enhance relationships, as communication is often seen as the cornerstone of human connection. However, silence allows us to listen more deeply, not only to the words of others, but also to the unspoken cues, the emotions, the body language, the underlying needs. In the quiet, we can tune into the subtleties of conversation, understanding the nuances that might otherwise go unnoticed in the noise of daily interaction. By listening without the urge to immediately respond or fill the silence with our own thoughts, we create space for others to express themselves fully. This deeper listening fosters empathy and understanding, allowing us to connect with others in a more meaningful way. In silence, we learn to listen not only to what is being said, but also to what is not being said, picking up on the underlying emotions, desires, and concerns that shape our interactions. Silence is also a powerful tool for growth and transformation. In the stillness, we are forced to confront ourselves, to look at our thoughts, our behaviors, and our beliefs without distraction. This confrontation can be uncomfortable, as it may reveal aspects of ourselves that we would rather avoid. However, it is only through this discomfort that we can grow. Silence gives us the space to face our fears, our insecurities, and our unresolved emotions. It allows us to process and release what no longer serves us, making room for new possibilities and perspectives. In the absence of external noise, we are left with only ourselves, and it is in this solitude that we find the courage to change, to evolve, and to become the best versions of ourselves. Silence in its purest form becomes a crucible for transformation, helping us shed the layers of conditioning and limitation that have held us back. Furthermore, silence can be a powerful source of creativity. In a world that demands constant productivity and output, it is easy to lose sight of the importance of rest and stillness in the creative process. We often equate creativity with action, brainstorming, doing, producing, but true creativity arises from silence. It is in the quiet moments that our minds can wander, allowing ideas to emerge naturally. When we remove the pressure to be constantly doing, we open ourselves up to inspiration and insight. Silence gives our minds the space to process information, make connections, and generate new ideas. It is in these moments of stillness that the most innovative solutions and creative breakthroughs can occur, as we allow our thoughts to flow freely without interruption or judgment. Silence is also a powerful choice in the context of conflict. In situations of disagreement or tension, our instinct is often to respond quickly, to defend our position, or to counter the other person's argument. However, in the heat of the moment, this reactive approach often leads to further escalation and misunderstanding. Silence, on the other hand, allows us to pause, to collect our thoughts, and to respond from a place of calm rather than reaction. By choosing silence in moments of conflict, we gain the opportunity to assess the situation more objectively, to consider the other person's perspective, and to choose a response that is thoughtful and measured. In many cases, silence can diffuse tension, creating space for resolution and understanding. It allows us to break the cycle of defensiveness and to approach conflict with a sense of composure and clarity. Ultimately, silence is a powerful choice because it allows us to reclaim our personal power. In a world that constantly demands our attention, our opinions, and our actions, choosing silence is an act of resistance. It is a declaration that we are in control of our lives, our thoughts, and our responses. By choosing silence, we are not giving in to the noise of the world, but rather asserting our ability to navigate life on our own terms. Silence gives us the freedom to create space for what truly matters, to reflect on our choices, and to respond to the world from a place of inner strength and clarity. It is in this space of quiet that we find our true power, unshaken by the distractions of the world around us. Silence is not merely the absence of sound, it is the presence of choice, the choice to step away from the noise and reconnect with our deeper selves, our values, and our purpose. Through silence, we regain control over our lives, allowing us to live with intention, focus, and clarity.